So the impeachment is done. The trial is over. The verdict is in. A bad day for America? I don't think so. And maybe not for the reasons you think. It's Rob Nelson Live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Yes, it's a Monday night. So heads up to everyone. Tell your friends. We're trying out a Monday, Wednesday, Friday half-hour show format instead of just the 2 one-hour shows. See how that goes. We're going to play with it. Hopefully you guys will like it, get more content more often. But it means you guys got to jump in earlier and faster with comments so that I can, go back and forth with all of you. All right, let's dive in. It's the first day. Well, after Sunday, it's the second day, first weekday after impeachment. Impeachment is over. The verdict came in. 57-43. Trump won. No surprise. No surprise. Was anybody surprised? Was anybody surprised at the verdict? Honestly, is there a single person out there watching or not watching who for a second thought this was going to go a different way? If you did, I'd love to hear why. I don't think anybody in Washington thought it would. I certainly don't think that Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or any of the leadership in the Democratic Party thought it would, nor the Republican Party. And they kept saying, maybe we'll get more votes. Maybe this trial will convince people. They knew it would never convince 17 senators to shift. The media knew it. Everybody knew it, which, again, makes you ask, why did they do it to begin with? Well, they say accountability. And in fact, 60% of Americans in a poll that was just released now say that they actually think that that Trump should have been convicted. Yeah, that's a big number, 60%. We even have a little graphic of it. 60% of people think Trump should have been convicted. However, he wasn't. And I don't think 60% thought he would be. There it is. It's from the Slatest. 60% of Americans say Trump should have been convicted. And that's a number that goes up from what it was before. And it's way higher than after the first impeachment trial. So you might say it worked. It worked. It didn't convict him. But basically, they got most Americans, it's not like a vast majority, but 60-40 to say Trump should have been convicted. So Trump's going to be out of the limelight. Not going to happen, guys. And we'll get to that. And this is a shorter show, so I'm going to go faster. So let me jump right into some things that I think happened and then set up why I think this was never meant to be for a conviction. I'm going to put it out there right now. I don't think Democrats ever intended to convict Trump. I said it a while ago. They knew the numbers. They knew they wouldn't have the numbers, yet they did it anyway. Why? Well, they said accountability. They said it was all about accountability, holding him accountable. I asked the question, if you want to hold him accountable, well, you're not holding him accountable if you're not convicting him, but maybe they wanted the public to see. They wanted the public to pay attention and shift the public opinion. 60% say he should have been convicted, which is a bad thing if, theoretically for Republicans, because it's like, look, you guys didn't convict him. And the whole narrative is going to be right now, why didn't Republicans convict him? And in fact, Mitch McConnell, the speaker of the leader of the Senate, the majority leader, voted and made clear, although he didn't push other people to vote one way or the other, he didn't what they call whip the vote, go out and say, you guys got to vote this way. He said, vote your conscience, and voted to acquit. And then minutes after voting to acquit, literally like 10 minutes later, he goes on the floor and gives a speech in which he completely slams Trump. He bashes him and says, Trump did it. Let me read a piece of it. Let me read a piece of what Mitch McConnell said. He said, there's no question, none, that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. No question about it. Okay. So, of course, Nancy Pelosi blew 7 gaskets on that one. Why would Mitch McConnell vote to acquit him and then come out and say he did it? I mean, what you ask yourself, what does that serve? What purpose does that serve? One, you look like a complete loser. I mean, you you voted, and he said, well, I couldn't vote for him because it wasn't constitutional. And that's going to be the Republican line. Couldn't vote for him because it wasn't constitutional. Now, again, I had this conversation with you guys before. I think it was constitutional. I think there's debate. There's fair debate. Alan Dershowitz thinks it wasn't. There's prominent scholars on both sides who say, but the majority of people in constitutional scholars argued, yeah, it's pretty much the Senate's prerogative. So it was constitutional. And, I think it was a constitutional move. Why would Mitch McConnell, either way, why would he come out afterward and say he did it? He did it. He did it. And it's horrible and it's disgusting. It's the most disgraceful thing we've ever seen. In fact, Nikki Haley, who was Trump's ambassador to the UN and a big Trump supporter, left the White House on good terms, like one of the few people who left the White House on good terms with the president, and spoke highly of him and his accomplishments and was really proud of what the administration did. She, in some ways, said something even more damning, especially because Mitch McConnell and Trump never really got along. Like, they were two different schools. They had to work together, but Haley was different. We'll pop her thing up in a second. That's not much, is it? It's not a vast majority, really, and that's the scary part, Denisa. Yeah, and I'll address that why, right? 60%. And I see why you think that's scary, and I want to get to that because I think it's really significant and good point. So here, let's look at what Nikki Haley said. So Nikki Haley said, and thanks, Reddit watchers, for being here. Nikki Haley said, I think he's lost, referring to Trump, any sort of political viability he was going to have. I think he's lost his social media, which meant the world to him, right? Trump without Twitter. I mean, I think he's lost the things that really could have kept him moving. So she's basically saying Trump's momentum is going to go, and you're hearing a lot of Republicans saying Trump's momentum is going, whoo, he's not going to, maybe he can run if he wants to, but he's not going to have the juice to do it. And Nikki Haley's saying he lost social media. The guy said he's crying. Well, I can't tweet. Probably is. Like, he's addicted to that thing, right? I mean, the guy needed like an intervention. And then her second thing she said was also interesting. She said, we need to acknowledge Trump let us down. He went down a path he shouldn't have, and we shouldn't have followed him. That's interesting. That, to me, is the really interesting thing. So she, like others, is acknowledging, wow, she's saying we shouldn't have followed Trump down the path. We did. We let ourselves follow him, and we shouldn't have. Why the distancing? Why stepping away? Why McConnell doing this? Well, now, if you're on one side, you might say because Trump was wrong. Let me just put it out there. These guys don't do anything because it's morally right or wrong. I don't care. I've said it before. I don't care which party they're from, left, right. I'm not saying no one, but the vast majority of people who are in those positions of power, and certainly the top leadership, every move they make is a political calculation. Mitch McConnell didn't just lose his stuff and he's so mad at Trump, he's going to go out there and just say he did it just to get him. And Nancy Pelosi, although I'll sometimes joke she wants to get Trump, she does, but not because she's so crazy mad that she can't stand it and she's got to get him. What about cancel culture? Well, we're not gonna do cancel culture. And I'm not sure what you mean by that. I'm not doing cancel culture in this half hour. I'll pick more of that up later in the week. However, you might argue Trump was canceled, but I don't think you can cancel Trump, and that's the scary thing, and I'll get to that in a second. So the last piece of this is, again, why would they come out and say it? Why would Mitch McConnell do that? Why would, why would Nikki Haley do that? Why? What's their motivation? Their motivation is political. It's not accidental. Mitch McConnell does nothing accidentally, nor does Nancy Pelosi. His motivation is he wants Trump to no longer be the force he is in the Republican Party. And he's walking a fine line. How does he move Trump away? And this is where both sides are going to have a problem. We're all part of cancel culture. Yeah, I agree with that comment, by the way, actually. It's a natural progression of the demise of our institutions. But that's the interesting thing about Trump. Trump was, in some ways, a push against the institutions. And that's why Mitch McConnell never liked Trump. Trump represented a populist thread. Whether Trump truly was a populist or not isn't the point. He represented a populist stream of thought against the elites. This is all, and I'll come back to this at the end, this has never really been for the people in power about making sure Trump is punished and held accountable. It's been since the beginning of stopping Trump because Trump represented a very destructive force to the mainstream institutions. I'm not a Trump fan for a lot of things, but I always liked the fact that he took on all the institutions. And I've always believed, in fact, that him taking on the intelligence community early on is what set everything up. I'm convinced the intelligence community has been behind so many things, even possibly behind QAnon, that they could be part of that, literally Q could be a program from the CIA because they wanted Trump gone. Trump was willing to take on any institution, and the institutional elites don't want to lose power. Okay, so what did Biden have to say about this? Biden had his own comments on this. And again, we never see Biden. Biden's like, has anybody seen Biden lately? He releases everything. I mean, I know Trump literally would tweet everything and be out there 24/7, but Biden literally it's like, is he there? I mean, it's all press releases, press statements. Just come out and talk. Come on camera. I want to know you're alive and well. But here's part of what he had to say. This sad chapter in our history has reminded us that democracy is fragile, that it must always be defended, that we must be ever vigilant, that violence and extremism has no place in America. Okay, that comment pushes buttons for me in so many ways. First of all, sadly, violence and extremism have had a place in America for a long time. Violence has had a place in America. I mean, one of the most violent societies ever, in modern history for sure. And to suggest violence, and again, most movements had violence involved in them, good ones too. Sometimes violence does, the revolution was violent. And there were, in the civil rights movement, there were many, but again, I get it, where everyone's going to say violence has no place in society. And that's fine. And I'm not going to go down the BLM thing because that violence was okay for some people, but this one wasn't. Not the point. The point that stuck out to me about what Biden said is that democracy is fragile. And to me, this impeachment proves the exact opposite. Our democracy is not fragile. People keep saying we almost lost. We didn't almost lose anything, you guys. What happened at the Capitol was bad. It was offensive. It was tragic. It was ugly to watch. It was criminal. It was bad. But it wasn't like our democracy almost fell. I mean, people act like they almost brought down democracy. They didn't even come close on a scale of 1 to 1,000. They barely made 2 in bringing down our democracy. Like now you say, well, they got close to members of Congress. Okay, they didn't actually hurt any of them. If they had, that still wouldn't have hurt democracy. To be honest, if you blew up the Capitol with everyone in it, it wouldn't bring our democracy down. But that would certainly come a lot closer. Our democracy was just fine. People have been saying Trump was going to destroy our democracy for 4 years. And this was the final proof. Look, they stormed the Capitol. It was bad. But you know what? 9/11 was worse. They flew planes into the World Trade Center. They flew planes at the Pentagon. They, drew planes aimed at the Capitol. They killed thousands of Americans. Our democracy survived that just fine. We survived, 500 people storming the Capitol, or 1,000, or whatever the number was. And yes, several people died. That's sad. It's very sad. Sadly, 25 people died in Chicago last weekend of gun violence. That's sad too. And I get it's institutionally a different standard, but democracy was never at risk. Our democracy was never in trouble. We were never at risk of losing our democracy. Even if they'd gone through and canceled, tried to, do their thing to pull votes and whatever. I mean, the legal process, which again, people forget, what everyone was pursuing was technically legal. People say the senators were going to cancel out the votes. Well, they have a path to which they can do it. They never were going to succeed at it. There's a legal path that allows legislatures to do it too, to be able to invalidate the electors. But it's never going to happen. It's never going to succeed. Our democracy has been so strong. It needs to be stronger, but not that way. That wasn't where our democracy was in trouble. Our democracy, yes, this is politics. Our democracy did just fine. That said, what happened at the Capitol shouldn't have happened. And I'm not getting into whether Trump did or didn't do it. I spent a whole episode on that. And I argued that I think Trump lied and led people down a bad path and, made up all kinds of crap after the election. He shouldn't have done it. I was disgusted that he did it then. I was offended. I wanted him to stop. But none of that to me crosses the free speech line, the protection. And I'm a free speech absolutist. I'm right up there, as those of you who've listened to my show all the time, with Justice Brandeis, the most liberal justice in American history, the most progressive, who wanted absolute free speech. And again, Trump didn't tell him to go be violent. Did people decide to do that? Yeah, it was also pre-planned. Did his words lead to that pre-planning? Perhaps, yes. Yeah, probably. That and QAnon and maybe the CIA. But yeah. But again, the bottom line to me is not whether what Trump did was okay. And I said before, Trump's biggest biggest thing, which is what they should have impeached him for, was dereliction of duty after the fact. His absolute failure to respond immediately and aggressively, to immediately come out and say, stop, enough is enough. And there's a call that he supposedly had with Senate Minority, the Kevin McCarthy, the number 2 at the time. The number 2 when the Republicans were in control, the number 2 Republican in the House of Representatives. And Republicans are the ones that recounted the call. This is what led to the almost having a witness. And what happened? McCarthy said, hey, call these people off. And Trump said, they're not my people. They're Antifa. And McCarthy was, they're not Antifa. They're your people. Call them off. And Trump supposedly said, well, I guess they care more about the election than you do. Did Trump let this happen after it happened? Yeah. Did he act fast enough? No. For that, impeach him. For that. Why didn't they impeach him for that? Because they weren't interested in spending the time to do a real impeachment process where you come up with all kinds of facts and information. They wanted to get this in quick and make a political point. That's against the Dems. And that's also why they didn't call witnesses. Any of you know, they almost called a witness, and they voted Saturday morning to call witnesses, and they voted, yes, we can have witnesses. We can have witnesses in the trial. And the witness they were going to bring was a member of Congress who was going to recount this conversation that she was a part of with Kevin McCarthy and the president. By the way, McCarthy apparently just went off on the president. It was like, do you know who the F I am? It's interesting, right? How powerful these people are. Going to get to that in a minute. So why didn't they then do it? Why didn't they call her? A lot of people on both sides, certainly on the left of center, have said, why didn't they call her? Why did they not do witnesses? It was a whiff ball, like you had the shot. Put the witnesses up now, because Republicans were going to call witnesses, and they were going to drag this thing out for weeks. And the Biden White House, and this, sources are saying, there was pushback from the Biden White House. Get this over with. We want to get busy with the business of what we're trying to do. We don't want the Senate tied up in this for another 3 weeks or a month. But if the point was hold him accountable, if the point was you might actually get votes to change, if that really was the point, which is what they said, then you take as long as it takes. You drag every witness out there. If the point really was we can change people's minds, if the point was, well, what's the point? We're never going to change their minds anyway. Then why did you have the trial to begin with? Half of a trial to change people's minds isn't really a very effective strategy. If you think we can change Republicans' minds, then you go all in. You put everything you can up there. You throw every piece of evidence. You get every witness up there. You drag them up until you force the Republicans to have to vote to convict. If you think you have a chance, if they thought they had a chance in the beginning, they certainly should have carried it through with witnesses. They didn't, because the goal was never to really convict him. Sure, that's what they wanted, but they knew it wasn't going to happen. No one in power thought this was going to happen. Doesn't work that way. Okay, move it. I got to move faster. Okay. And I believe Nancy Pelosi also always knows what she is doing as well. So, and so now they're going to have a 9/11 commission. They're going to have a commission on 9/11. Whoa, here we go. Okay, we're going to have like a 9/11 style commission on this whole thing. Is Trump ever going to go away? Guys, do you not see a pattern here? We're going to now have Trump in the news again. It's like we had the Russia thing. Then we had the first impeachment. Now the second impeachment. He's out of office. We continue that. Now we'll do an investigation, a massive commission investigation, so we can keep this in front of everyone for even longer. And they're saying, no. It's so that we make sure we don't make the same mistakes we made before. Who are we kidding? I don't know what America is doing right now. We are obsessed with this Trump thing. It's like you can't let Trump go. It's like the gift that keeps on giving or the curse that won't go away. And it's not going to go away, because I don't think Democrats really want it to go away. Republicans want it to go away. They want Trump out of the picture, and he's not. He just had a rally today, an impromptu rally, thousands of people out cheering for him in Florida. Democrats want to keep Trump in the limelight because it keeps their base fed up, wound up, angry, hostile, after each other. Okay, I'm going to jump over a couple things here. Yeah, I want to just point out quickly the security issue, Nancy Pelosi and the security issue. People have raised the question, why wasn't there more security? Let's pop that up real quick, Crafty. Next one, Crafty. Sorry, I'm going to skip that one. That's my bad. Okay, so Republicans are demanding Pelosi answer security questions leading up to the Capitol riot. Why? Well, This is why. Because Capitol Police Chief Steve Sund, who resigned on January 4th, he didn't resign on the 4th, he resigned after the 6th, approached the sergeant at arms of the Capitol to ask for help from the National Guard based on the threats they were getting. And he said that the former sergeant at arms, who also resigned, said he was concerned about the optics and didn't feel the intelligence supported it. What? Guys, seriously? You're getting credible threats from police and the FBI that there's going to be attacks on the Capitol, and you don't think the intelligence supported it? It was bad optics? I know no one's going to make a big deal out of that, but the fact is, because Trump did or didn't do this, and because the riots happened, doesn't excuse the lack of preparation or the blind willingness to respond when it was asked for. And it raises the question, which again, not trying to throw a conspiracy out there, but do you think Nancy Pelosi wasn't told? She runs everything in the House. She runs operations. She oversees everything. Think they didn't tell her? Just let's not tell her about it. And she obviously was okay. Now, I'm not going to go as far as to say they thought they'd attack the Capitol and that would be good for Democrats. I don't know. That's a crazy conspiracy theory. It's possible. But I am going to say they didn't think it was worth worrying about. Why not? Why the heck not when you're getting those threats? Why wouldn't you? And after 9/11, we did the same thing. We looked at why we weren't more prepared, and and that's a big deal. Why we're not more prepared. Why weren't we? And why didn't anybody care? And why aren't we paying attention to that? Again, I'm not saying they wanted it to happen, but they certainly looked the other way. And that's not okay. That's just because someone did something bad, they're responsible. But it doesn't make it okay if you're the one that should have prevented that from happening and you didn't. That's negligent too. We're not having that conversation, are we? But here's the place I really want to go. And Crafty, I'm going to skip over this because of time. I'm going to skip over this whole Kamala Harris, Joe Biden thing, if you're okay with that. And I just want to, and I'm going to set up for the end here with Trump's attorney. I think that we have a mistake about how powerful people in office are. Hello, Dwight Schroeder, 26. I mean, these guys are so powerful. We've gotten this notion that Joe Biden's like Grandpa Joe. Grandpa Joe. You don't become president of the United States if you're Grandpa Joe. And I know people are like, well, he campaigned from the basement. He's a stick figure. Yes and no. He was a very, very powerful member of the Senate for 40 years. People used to say this is about George Bush, the first one. Like he was like this dotting guy. And I used to always say back in the day, George Bush was the head of the CIA before he was president. Do you know what that guy knew? Do you know how much power that guy had? I mean, you don't become Mitch McConnell. You don't become Nancy Pelosi. You don't become Donald Trump. Or you don't become Joe Biden. You don't get these positions if you're not ridiculously powerful and ridiculously calculating. Joe Biden is not sitting back, Mr. Grandpa. He's incredibly powerful, as are the people around him. And Nancy Pelosi, she's not grandma, she's not like a nice old mom there looking out for us. She's calculating every step of the way. These people have power that is enormous. And they orchestrate everything around power, and we become the pawns. You guys, we're the pawns in their power because they make you think we're doing it for this reason. Same I've said this about Trump. Trump made it all about him for the people. I'm for the people. I think he did some things that were really good on a populist level, and I'm a populist. But I don't know I don't think that's what he's really about. I think who he's really about, you saw from his whole lifetime. And Nancy Pelosi will tell you, we're doing this for the good of America. We're doing this to unify. We're doing this to hold him accountable. It was never about that. It's always been about political power, a battle between the elites and the populists. Trump was a populist. Whether he truly was or not, he drove a populist movement. And the elites don't want that on either side. Mitch McConnell doesn't want that. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want that. They don't want us to really have the power we have. But we buy into their thing that they're out there for us. They're looking out for us. It's all about us. They're really concerned. The logic should just simply tell you, if Nancy Pelosi really wanted to hold Trump accountable, well, she knew she didn't have the votes. And if she thought they could, then they should have done everything they could, brought every witness they could, driven this thing as long as it took, if that's what it was really about. It was never about that. It was never about truly holding him accountable. It was all about power. It's all about power on both sides. And there's a battle going on right now, a splitting, a fracturing of both parties internally and across the country. This is why Trump isn't going away. Not because there's a bunch of millions of people who are conspiracy crackpots who think the election was stolen. There are plenty of people, by the way, 30% still think the election was stolen, but that's not what this is about. There's 70 million people who are fed up with things, and Trump represented I'll bash all institutions. Populism is only going to keep rising in America on both sides. To some extent, AOC is somewhat of a left populist. Not exactly in the classic sense of the word, maybe, but very much so. And just like she's a bartender who then runs for Congress and now has, a year later has 20 million followers. Like when you listen to AOC, you hear a populist streak. Populism unites both sides. There's a populism on the left and the right, but they both have a center core. It's why Bernie Sanders and Trump had certain things in common. And that populism is what's rising. And the elites and the institutions don't like populism. They want control. Don't kid yourself. Don't pretend they're really looking out for me, because they're really not. And if you think, again, if you really think that they're very sincere, they mean all of it. I mean, seriously, you're underestimating. Go watch House of Cards 100 times. Like it's that real. And I worked in a White House. I worked in the Clinton White House, and I was around the most powerful people in that administration, including the president. I saw firsthand how powerful they are and how manipulative and how calculating every single thing was and is. That power is not changing. That battle is out. It's them against us. The Robin Hood thing, the elites, Wall Street. It's an elite versus the populists. And that's why Trump isn't going away. Whether he really is a populist or not, he represents a populist streak. And people are getting more and more and more angry and feel more and more lied to. One of Trump's defense attorneys went on CBS, and I'll set this up real quick. He went on CBS, and the reporter asked him after the thing about what he felt about it in the whole thing. And I'm pretty fair. I watched the whole thing. I'm only going to play you guys a little clip in a second, but I watched the whole thing. And honestly, she was fair. She was completely fair to him. But he pointed out that they manipulated, tampered with evidence. And she goes, well, are you saying, and she lists the three things that were suggested: editing videos, changing the Twitter verification on someone who was not verified to verified, and changing the date of a post to make it look like it had happened now when it really happened a year ago. And he thought she was trying to downplay it. And he goes crazy. He's like, you think tampering with some evidence is okay? And is that not enough? And there's more. And she's like, I wasn't saying that. And he's like, yes, you were. He's like, you were dismissing it. And he even literally put words in her mouth she didn't say. But I can see why he thought that was the case, because the media narrative has been to dismiss. And I think in her case, she really was just trying to point out to viewers. I don't know what was in her head, but she seemed fairly trying to point out, this is the things you're saying. And he's right. Those are significant tampering. And you don't get to tamper 3, 4 things, 5, 6, 7 things. You're tampering with evidence to try to make your point. And that's not okay to do. And he was right. But what what he then says is what's most fascinating to me. What he then says is this. Let's play the clip of what he said.
Joining me now is former President Trump's attorney, Michael Van Der Veen. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Let's get right into those words that we heard from Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. He ended the trial with his passionate speech about President Trump's involvement in the insurrection. During it, he said that the former president is still liable for everything he did during his period in office. Are you expecting to face more charges against Mr. Trump in the near future, and do you anticipate being part of that defense?
No, that's just political rhetoric, and I was hopeful that something would come out of this, that the political rhetoric would stop out of Washington, D.C., but I guess apparently it hasn't.
Were you, though, surprised to hear those words coming from the leader of the Republican Party in the Senate?
I'm not surprised to hear a politician say anything at all. No.
Well, throughout the trial, you denied that Mr. Trump had a role
for whatever
in
reason. We have the
January
whole
6th
thing playing here. Do we just have the part at the end that's playing the whole clip? Do we just have the part where he goes off on the media?
Yeah, I got it here.
Because you guys, that whole thing, that's the whole clip of the interview. It's worth watching, but I just want the part, we're going to play the part where he goes off on, it's nothing to do with the actual case. It has to do with the media.
I have it. Let me pull it down real quick. And in the meantime, Colorian gave you a tip on Reddit.
Thank you. You got it there, Crafty?
Yeah, I'm pulling it into StreamYard now.
Okay, guys, so bear with me for a second, and I'll set this up again because it's really important. Because I'm going to sort of preface what he does. You don't have to like him or dislike him. You don't have to be on his side or against him. You can say he shouldn't have defended Trump. He did a great job. He did a terrible job. Whatever you want to say. But the thing that's so significant about Michael Vander Veen's comments that we're going to play is how he literally goes off on the media, complete all of the media, and it's interesting because to me, this sets up why we're in such trouble. Because I think we have created a narrative. We've created these narratives, and the media has fed both sides. Both sides of the media feed their narratives. I've said this before. They feed a narrative that they want to keep going. And the political parties and the most powerful people in politics, and that's Trump, that's Pelosi, that's McConnell, it's all of them, feed into these narratives. They drive these narratives because they want to keep us divided and they want to keep their power. And we start believing the narrative. We believe the narrative we most want to believe. And Crafty, okay, so let me just play this real quick and then I'll wrap it up. Can you fast forward the other one and just play the last, minute or so of it? Is that a yes or a no?
I'd have to go through the whole thing.
Okay. So guys, I'm sorry I can't play this clip for you. It's bumming me out big time. But he goes off. I'll just narrate as best I can. He goes off on the media. And he goes off on both sides. And he's like, I am so sick of the media on both sides creating these narratives, misrepresenting things, using facts as they see fit. And you can see that he's literally not picking on the left. He's like, both sides do it, and I'm sick of it. He's like, I'm not a media guy, but it's warping how we look at things. And that would be my point on this, that if you are staying in your side, in your camp, you're hearing the narrative of your side, of your camp. You're hearing what your side wants to tell you. You're hearing what the media you watch wants you to say. It's reinforcing it. The politicians are telling you what they think you want to hear on both sides. And the problem with that is we lock into our narratives. We lock in deeper and deeper and deeper. And we no longer, like he put it, he's like, I watched Fox or CNN and it's like I'm watching two completely different universes. And I've said that before. That's not okay. If you don't realize that they are trying to divide us, you're missing the bigger point. The Democrats don't want to unite us. Unity doesn't get them elected. They're going to play Trump for as long as they can. And the Republicans don't really want to unite us either. That doesn't help them either. They want to right now fight back as hard as they can as victims against the left, socialism, the progressive left. Neither side is actually trying to fight for you. Individuals may be within there, but for the most part, they're not. And the media doesn't make money by saying we're all together. They make money by feeding your fear, driving your fear up and up and up. So the real battle, you guys, is between us and them. Us is us, the average, the populist. And I'm a populist. And the battle we're going to see going forward is, as both parties fracture, a populist movement in the U.S. that is going to rise up. And it's going to rise up from the left, and it's going to rise up from the right. And it's going to redefine the landscape of American politics. And it's going to redefine the landscape of culture. And cancel culture is going to be part of that too. Because the cancel culture is corporate driven, guys. It's not just political, it's corporate driven. Populism is going to be the future. And the battle for populism against the elites is what this impeachment was all about, what Trump's presidency, post-presidency, and what the next 4 years are going to be all about. It's Rob Nelson Live. Thanks for watching.